Hey everybody, my name is Dwayne France, and I'm the founder and creator of Headspace and Timing, a blog, podcast, and series of ebooks that's designed to change the way that we think and talk about veteran mental health. I'd like to give you a short preview of episode 140 of the Headspace and Timing podcast. On this episode of the podcast, I have a conversation with the founder of the Veterans Yoga Project, Dr. Daniel J. Libby. Daniel and I talk about mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and how it can truly change the lives of those veterans who try it out and find that it works for them. Here's a short preview of our conversation. To start off, Dan and I talk about what mindfulness is and how not practicing mindfulness can make us feel like we're not in control.
To me, mindfulness is just about harnessing all of your attentional resources, right? At any point in your moment-to-moment existence, your attention is somewhere, right? Your attention is focused, maybe scrolling through your emails. Maybe your attention is focused on trying to figure out what you want to have for dinner. Sometimes your attention is focused on your work. And a lot of times our attention is pulled away from us in a way that we don't feel in control of, right? And especially in today's world, there's so many things competing for our attention. And our ability to harness our attention in line with our values and goals allows us to live a strong and meaningful and purposeful life. When we don't have control of our attention, it runs away from us, and it is more of a liability than an asset.
Dan and I also talk about the difference between mindfulness and hypervigilance. And while they have some things in common, the things that make them different makes mindfulness beneficial, while hypervigilance can possibly be disruptive.
Importantly, part of that mindfulness practice, and this is the difficult part of it, is that if you look at the definitions of mindfulness, it's really about that present moment awareness, but there's also an attitude of acceptance or welcoming. And we know that one of the symptom clusters of post-traumatic stress is avoidance, right? And there's also hypervigilance, right, which would be part of more of that hyperarousal. But if you think about hypervigilance in particular, it is about paying attention right now, right? Hypervigilance is being very focused on the moment. But there's with this attitude that I'm going to have to jump up and move into action, that I'm going to have to jump up and save somebody, or I'm going to have to jump up and run. And there's this paying attention to the present moment on purpose, but with an expectation of having to act. Where mindfulness is about paying attention to the present moment on purpose, but it's more with an attitude of just welcoming what happens, of being non-reactive, and just noticing without having to react and without the expectation that we're going to have to do anything.
Now, moving beyond mindfulness and into yoga, which Daniel describes as mindful movement, we discuss how a practice like yoga can have both physical and psychological benefits.
Having a dedicated practice can be, and I think this is where the yoga practice, or what people call yoga, right, which I would call mindful movement, is where maybe sometimes that mindful movement practice really helps, because being able to do both your physical exercise and your mental exercise at the same time, but it also allows us to really embody the practices. And so it's not just a mental exercise. Becoming fully aware, becoming mindful means actually utilizing the resources of your nervous system that is in your entire body. So again, when we're talking about the 5 tools that we teach, it's not just about focusing your attentional resources. It's not just about using your breath to, be able to control sort of how you feel, but being able to use a physical practice can often give us that routine, right, where we can actually start to have a dedicated practice.
We also talk about the stereotypes around yoga practices and how those stereotypes might be shifting as more veterans try it and find benefit in it.
Years ago, when Veterans Yoga Project was just beginning, there were a lot more stereotypes about meditation and yoga, right? It's either for somebody who can sit cross-legged and, just put their mind in this blank, awesome, blissful place, or, the young person in, tight clothes that's, perfectly proportioned on the cover of the yoga magazine. There's a lot of different stereotypes, but I think in a large part, those stereotypes have really fallen away. And that what I see more and more is that, one, if you can't sleep, if you are in chronic pain, if you're dealing with anger issues or trauma issues, you'll do anything that works. And you'll try anything, especially with the older Vietnam veterans who have really led the way and have shown that these practices are actually a lot more helpful than stuff that I've been trying for 40 years. That, and you just start to hear more stories. There's just more stories of more veterans out there who are practicing. And, we're talking about, the quote, most masculine of the masculine special forces guys, that, the most successful CEOs in the world, like they're all people that practice meditation in some way.
We also talk about how yoga can benefit us psychologically or physically, but how empowering it can be as a way to take back some of the lack of control we may feel in our daily lives in response to negative events.
People want practices that are empowering. Nobody wants to take pills, right? I'm all for some of these evidence-based and having professional supports. I think there's nothing more important. And especially if you're doing these practices, you need a community, you need a social support, you need professional supports. But most importantly, trauma is a disempowering experience. From the moment trauma happens, you are disempowered in your mind, in your body. And these practices are re-empowering and help put us in control. And that's what people are looking for. And, we all want to be better at what we do. My mission, I guess, is to, in particular, help veterans and families who are struggling with reintegration or struggling with trauma or just moving through that process to be able to have the tools to do so successfully.
And finally, we talked about the need for service members, veterans, and their families to try a number of different types of yoga practices rather than just trying it once and thinking that it's not for them.
Certainly, if there's veterans listening to this who have not done yoga, what I would say is go to 3 different yoga classes, because there are no 2 yoga classes that are the same. There are some yoga classes that'll, they crank up the heat and you're doing a physical workout that is the strongest physical workout you've ever done, and you leave with a puddle of sweat on the floor. And that's the kind of, there's other types of yoga where you basically lay down on top of blankets and bolsters and take a nap and sort of do a guided practice. And there's every version in between. And so what I would encourage people to do is to go to 5 different yoga classes, 5 different yoga teachers, and practice and try these different styles until you find one that works for you. I sometimes hear from a veteran, I tried yoga, that doesn't work for me, or I don't like yoga. And I don't know what that means, because again, there's so many different styles of yoga and so many different ways to bring your attentional resources to focus on your own breath and your own body and your own mind in a way that is supportive and helps you grow and helps you get stronger and more flexible and more balanced. And there's not one way to do it.
Now, Daniel and I talk a lot more in the longer conversation. We talk about some of the physical changes in the brain that occur as a result of meditation, how the Veterans Yoga Project got started, and how it's doing well. If you want to check out the full show, go over to veteranmentalhealth.com/HST140, or the link is in the comments in the video below the video. You can also hit subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you go to veteranmentalhealth.com/podcast, you scroll down and you'll see a bunch of different podcast player icons. Click on the one that you use. iTunes is the one here. Click the subscribe button, and then you'll get all of the information whenever any of the new episodes are downloaded or released. If you're looking for more information on veteran mental health, I suggest that you check out veteranmentalhealth.com/Amazon. Check out the 2 books that we have already released, and bookmark that. As we release books in the future, they'll be there. Thank you for taking the time to listen and learn more about veteran mental health, and look forward to talking to you next time. Until then, remember, veterans, you're not alone, ever.